Hello and welcome to Business Today Television. I'm Abha Bakaya, and today we're taking a look at Business Today magazine's cover story of the month. Joining us, we've got Saurav Majumdar, the editor of Business Today, Ashish Rukhayar, senior associate editor who's been tracking the story this time around, and joining us are two of the interviewees of the financial influencer story. We've taken a look at some of India's biggest financial influencers. Ankur Warikoo, Mukul Malik, joining us on the show today to share with us insights into their story, what's made them tick with the retail investor, what's driving the frenzy when it comes to financial content online, and really what the strategy is going forward. Thanks so much for joining us. Saurav, I want to start off with you so that you set the context and share with us why you felt this was an important story to take as the cover this time around. What's really led to these individuals, and we've spoken to about 4, 5, 6 of them. Share with us, really what the headline takeaway was, why you felt this was a signature piece to do for the August issue.
Well, Abha, it's pretty much the same reasons which you just enumerated a while ago. It's essentially the reason is at Business Today, we want to capture trends, right? The most interesting trends which are staring at us in the financial and corporate ecosystem. When we looked around and we found this, and you know what's happened to the markets all of last year and now continues now. Despite the pandemic, the markets have been on a tear. And not just that, there have been a huge number of new investors, retail investors coming into the market. And many of these new investors, in fact, we found, are keen to find out what's, the basics of financial analysis, how to look at the markets, what are the key drivers of the markets, how do they read the markets. Essentially, if somebody is coming in, looking at talking to friends and family and figuring out, there's a huge lot of, interesting companies in the market. How do they really look at not just stock picking at all, but how do they analyze this whole phenomenon? How do they look at the market? What do they do? So as they do that, there is this bunch of young, energetic, enthusiastic, and YouTube stars, which we found has emerged. And those are the people who are actually connecting with this young lot, the new investors, and coming out with their analysis of the markets, financial fundamentals, how to read the balance sheets and all of that. And I thought that we all in the newsroom thought that this is an extremely interesting trend to capture. And that's why when Ashish and all of us started talking to these people, it became very clear that. And remember, many of them are not even from the tier one cities. They're not from the big cities. Many of them are from Raipur, Pune, and others. So it's not from the 4 metros necessarily. So I think that was the very, very interesting trend, which we thought would make for a very interesting cover story as we move on.
Fantastic. Ashish, you spoke with a number of these key influencers across the country. I know I happened to meet Pranjal, who's from Chhattisgarh, talking about non-metro cities. Tell us what surprised you the most, what you discovered in the process of doing the story.
Abha, Saurav has more or less set the tone for this discussion, and I wouldn't be exaggerating when I say that this is one of the most interesting stories that I have done since a long time. And every new element that came out was more interesting than the earlier element or the aspect of the story. But 2 or 3 key elements which I think really surprised me a lot, where one was the kind of following these influencers have. I mean, some of these influencers have followers in millions. I mean, just to give you a context, even the official YouTube channels of whether you look at these newest discount broking firms or the old traditional broking firms who have been in business for decades, even they have not been able to garner such kind of following over the years. And these influencers have done this over a matter of just a year or so. So that was the first biggest surprising element of the story, that the kind of millions of investors or potential investors that are looking up to these influencers for advice in terms of, say, what kind of investment should they do, sector, whether it is sector, financial planning, investment management. So that was one of the most surprising elements. The other surprising element was the age of these influencers. Most of these influencers are on the lower side of 40.
Right.
And if you look at most of the business channels, the people who come on air giving advice in terms of stock investments, they would be in their late 40s or early 50s, to say the least. And these guys are just in their maybe late 30s. So that was another surprising element, that at such a young age, there are millions of people who are ready to listen to them and look up to them for advice in terms of investments. And the third point, which Saurav also stressed upon, was the location of these people. None of these are from the metro towns. Yes, Mukul is from Delhi, but most of the other people, they're all from tier 2, tier 3 cities. And that, I think, was quite surprising, because when we look at Indian stock market, there are just 15, 20 odd cities where bulk of the turnover comes.
Yeah.
So these three factors, I think, the number of followers, age of these influencers, and the location, those were the three key surprising elements of the story. Abha?
All right. Mukul, Ankur, let's get you both into this conversation. We have lots of questions for you, especially since everyone is turning to you for financial advice, as Ashish also just described. Mukul, set the tone for us. With so many people wanting to get into the markets, it being an asset class of choice right now, despite the kind of levels it's trading at, is there an element of risk, and how do you address it? How do you really advise young retail investors who are also possibly first-time investors to really maneuver the world of the stock markets today?
Yeah, I think a couple of things were already touched upon. But since you're talking about the risk, see, whenever at least we are making any kind of video, we focus on both pros and cons, right? Which means that the kind of returns that you can make from an investment, as well as the risks that you will be, exposed to. So, and that is one of the reasons that, people actually relate to you, right? Because you are giving an unbiased opinion. And I think that adds to the credibility of an influencer, right?
Yep.
So, yes, there is a lot of content on YouTube, social media, and see, you have to stand out from the gimmicky content, right? So, wherein maybe somebody is only talking about returns that you can make 50% returns year on year, but we have made a conscious choice that we tell people exactly what you can expect in the long term. Maybe in a year you can make 50%, right? But over long term, see, your expectation should be between 15 and 20%. So that is the right. I mean, when you set the right expectations, I think people will follow you, they will relate to it, and they will realize that it is very realistic, right?
Right. Okay, I think we have Pranjal Kamra also with us now. Great to have you, Pranjal. We've been diving into the world of investing and how to approach it according to the influencers of the day. Let me go across to Ankur next, because Ankur, I know that you do advise people on how to really create a portfolio, look at the long term, be wise with their investments. But are people open to that? Are investors open to that at a time when everyone's looking to make money and do it quickly?
I think the key here, Abha, is at least what I would personally want to call myself is not a financial advisor. I'm nearly not an expert. I'm not qualified to. I spread what I would say is financial awareness. And that means, just as Mukul pointed out, you have to make the audience aware of the pros and the cons, the risks involved, as well as the gains that they can benefit from. So whatever is the recommendation that comes from my side is frankly just how I look at my money, the mistakes that I've done, all the things that I have realized over the course of making several investments, faltering at them, gaining from them. Yeah. And I think that makes it very relatable. What has happened is perhaps for the first time in the last 1 year, there have been relatable faces that have come online, sharing their story, sharing their experiences, sharing whatever it is that they know about money, about personal finance, and speaking to audiences not to get them to take a decision, but to have all points of awareness in front of them when they have to make that decision, whenever they make that decision. So at least personally for me, I am very, very long. I will never settle or propose anything that is short term. And I think that long-term gain then is visible for investors, because then they know we're not going to get gimmicky or short-term content that will just make them rich overnight. This is the long patient game.
I think Ashish also had a couple of questions. Ashish, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, just taking off from what Ankur said, see, the last 1.5 years has seen it's kind of a one-way rally in the markets. But if you look at the recent past, a lot of people have started talking about this whole froth in the markets, and especially in the context of new investors, first-time investors coming in the market who maybe have never experienced losses in their life in terms of stock market investing, because they came at a time when the markets were just rising from say 28, 28, 30 or 30,000 odd levels to the current levels. So maybe, I mean, maybe if Pranjal could chip in with his view on how does he see this whole froth, and how do you think the new investors can cope with it if they suddenly are in a situation where they are experiencing losses for the first time? What would be his advice?
Right. So, you're absolutely right here. A lot of youngsters, they entered the market and they see that the market can go only one way. We have seen what's been happening with cryptos. We have seen what's been happening with IPOs specifically. And, they feel that whatever they pick, it turns into gold. And that is a very, very dangerous proposition. In the long run in the market, you need to have a process to be successful. In the short run, anything could work, but in the long run, you have to define your do's and don'ts very, very clearly. Because ultimately, we need to look at the market this way, that over the past 40 years, the Indian market has given a CAGR of 14%. So on an average, every investor should be making 14% CAGR in the long run. The reality is people don't. Most retail investors don't. Why? Because again, we don't know that which are the things we don't need to touch, and we cannot classify do's and don'ts. So I think, and this is my focus also when I make videos, that, if I can tell people what not to do, my job is done. Then the market will make them 14% CAGR. My job is to ensure that they don't lose out on the average return. So I think it's, for me as an investor, I focus on what not to do. So, as a matter of principle, I'm not touching cryptos because I don't understand. I don't touch derivatives. It's not about what's right or what's wrong. It's about understanding your skill, understanding your strength, and which asset classes you understand. For a cricketer like Bhuvneshwar Kumar, you can't ask him to bowl at 150 kmph. He just can't do that. It's about understanding his strength. So as an investor, your strength could be predicting crypto prices. Your strength could be predicting commodity prices. But then, just because you're successful in one asset class, don't assume you are good at everything. Understand where you perform well, understand where your weaknesses are, and stick within your limitations. And I think you will beat that 14% CAGR.
Saurav, you had this question and you have a chance to ask any of our panelists today about the froth in the market and also about retail investors and advice. And I'm going to hand over to you to grill them a little bit.
Thanks, Abha. In fact, taking off from where what Pranjal said, it's all very well, Pranjal and Mukul and Ankur, to talk about the fact that you're actually long-term. And of course, that is what you are. Many of you, you don't give advice in that sense. Stock picking is not your thing. But, when there is a frenzy, and we've used that word in this discussion, when there is a real frenzy coming in terms of the new investors and everybody wants to make a quick buck, they're seeing these big listings happening immediately, the gains on listing. How much how much can you actually manage expectations, number one? And number two, has any of you, have you got people coming, and telling you that, we watched your video and here we are, we've burnt our fingers. How do you deal with stuff like that? Any of you want to take on that?
Okay. Now, on the contrary, sort of what's happened is that I think that the biggest lesson that you learn while managing money is when you burn your money, because no one can frankly tell you that this is what's going to happen and you would believe them and be ready for it. Only when you see losses for real do you realize what were mistakes that you were making, and hopefully go back to all the literature you were relying on, whether it's online content or books or what have you, and realize that they were right in the beginning itself. So I get an unbelievable number of emails of people who have faltered, almost apologizing for not listening to what everyone had to say and them going against that rule or principle. And it is what Pranjal mentioned, when when there is a high tide, everyone looks as if they are the best swimmers around, but only when a low tide comes in, you realize who's true and who's not. So right now, even if you were to bet on the lousiest Varico group of companies, you would make money and you would think that you're smart. But when you realize that this is not how you make overnight money and short term, you will have perhaps the biggest lesson that you should have had. So I think what's happening is that the theory and the content and the foundation is being built nicely. But personally, if you were to ask me, I'm sadistic in the sense that I would love them to falter at a low level for them to realize that this foundation is actually foundational and not something which just sounds nice to know, but doesn't apply in real life.
Mukul, you were going to jump in on that as well. Why don't you share your take?
Yeah, I think I would generally agree with Ankur, and I'll just touch upon the IPO frenzy right now. I happen to make IPO videos also, and a lot of people sometimes say, I generally don't recommend, right? Towards the end, I'll give them the complete analysis, right? Yeah. But the choice is people's, right? Ultimately, I'll basically tell them all the pros and cons. We do a complete SWOT analysis. Yeah. But the thing is that people will still happen to buy the IPO, and probably they'll do it only for listing gains, but sometimes they'll hold on to it, right? And in this video, when valuations are so high, there are quite high chances that eventually the stock will, go down. Sure. So people make losses, and we have seen such comments that, okay, you said that this can be long term, but see, we have to actually see the valuations at the time of buying, right? So that is very, very important. So see, the whole point is that we want people to learn fishing, and rather than giving them the exact fish.
Right. All right, Pranjal, what about you? What's the strategy?
Right. So in terms of beginners, there are two main emotions that driving their decisions: herd mentality and FOMO. Most of the time you want to invest in a stock because everyone else is, or because your friend told that he made huge money in this particular trend or so.
Exactly.
So again, it's about realizing, this is something peculiar to stock market that does not happen in real life. Just because Mukesh Ambani made money running a telecom company, not all of us go running to start a telecom company. It doesn't happen. But if your friend made money in a particular trend, we all want to jump in that trend. Whereas it could be a case that he understands the trend and you don't. So, most beginners are driven by FOMO. They don't want to miss out on anything. We need to realize that in the long run, we'll miss more multi-baggers than we will accept. 99% of the stocks that run up, we won't be able to get them. It's not humanly possible. Best investors in the world probably miss 90% of the great stocks. They just make money. In their lifetimes, the big money is made by the big investors in some 5 to 10 stocks. So, we need to realize that over our journey, we'll miss most of the trends, and that's okay. I mean, it does not make us any less of an investor, does not make us less doer. It's okay to miss out on rallies. So I think if that mindset we adopt, we will stop following the trend, because trends stop suddenly without any warning. And, then you are suddenly caught in the middle. So I think it's more about this mindset.
Okay, well, talking about trends, I know Ashish wanted to bring up a few. Ashish?
Yeah, so basically, touching upon what Mukul said on this whole IPO frenzy, we recently saw this whole hype about Zomato, and everybody on the street was talking about it, whether they were for it or against it, but they were talking about it. So, wanted to stress upon the overall theme part of the market, that all of you make videos on a lot of themes in terms of sector, in terms of products. So, if I can take the example of Zomato again, it has set a precedent in terms of a lot of startups, loss-making companies were looking at Zomato and the kind of treatment that the market gives. So if Mukul, maybe if you can touch upon the issue of how do you think investors would look at this sector, or do you think that fintech and startup is going to be the next big theme for the markets, and you would be looking at making a lot of videos on this theme as such?
Sure, Ashish. I think generally, I used to make content on concepts generally. But yes, over last one and a half years, we have started making videos on topical content as well, So talking about the IPOs, see, the thing is, I see IPOs as an investment for listing gains, because the thing is very clear. any company which is coming up with an IPO, it would want the highest valuation possible. Very simple, right? So valuations are going to be high, right? But as long as there is a high tide and people are, jumping onto it, you can probably make listing gains. But if you're looking at the long term, you have to value the company right. Otherwise, see, if you're buying the IPO for long term, probably the valuations are not right at that time. I mean, most likely the valuations are not right, because we have seen over time, right? We actually value all these IPOs. So 90% of them are overvalued. So for long term, it has not made sense. So whenever the valuations are right, you make a call then, right? So for example, Zomato may have a long term value. I'm not saying that Zomato is a bad company to invest in, but probably the valuations are not right now.
Okay. Ashish, I know you had a couple more questions on themes. I'm going to let you continue with that.
Yeah. I would like to ask Pranjal about this whole ESG has been a big theme of late. I mean, globally, ESG is it's a huge segment with some of the global funds looking at huge investments. India also, it's catching up. A market regulator has also made a lot of compliance requirements for listed companies in terms of ESG disclosures. And the last 6 odd months have seen a lot of mutual funds also launching a lot of ESG funds. So what's your take on ESG? Do you think that there is enough proper ESG compliant companies, not just in letter, but in spirit as well?
Right. Before touching upon this, I would just like to add to what Mukul said. So, one thing about IPOs, I'm really sympathetic towards the young investors investing in IPOs, because, this is the time wherein actually IPOs are coming of companies which actually millennials use as consumers. I remember 5 years ago, I could hardly find listed companies which I use. So most companies anyways, I did not understand, heavy industries, B2B, B2G companies, commodity companies. As a normal consumer, as a student, as a fresher, you don't understand. And you are suddenly depressed that most companies that I want to invest in are not listed. So, to see companies like BSC, Policy Bazaar, Nykaa, Zomato, Barbecue, Burger King coming in, I can understand the excitement. And even if these millennials falter, at least in the long run, this is a great thing that as this generation, the products that we are using are actually available. And in the long run, this will increase penetration in the equities market. Coming to ESG, I think it's partially misunderstood, because, when we look at ESG, the first thing that comes to mind is that ITC does not qualify. This is just an example, because, it makes cigarettes, tobacco, products that are bad for the society. So, it cannot be good for the environment, cannot be good for society, and therefore, it can be marked down on the ESG parameters. So, our understanding of ESG it's very wrong. In fact, there are something called credits. So, what happens is, if you sell a product which is per se viewed as negative in terms of ESG, you are marked down on. But then some company that's doing very well on the ESG parameter, they get credits. And these credits could be exchanged. And then say ESG, ITC is bad because its major revenue comes for a product that's bad for the society. But at the same time, they also look at other parameters. ESG rating is done on multiple parameters. So it could be what kind of packaging material are you using? Is it recyclable, reusable? What kind of CSR you are doing? What kind of social impact are you providing in terms of healthcare, education, and things like that? So per se, even if a company which has a product that per se negative on the ESG parameter, it could still enhance its ranking based on what it does outside selling its core product. So I think, we cannot just label companies that for an ESG fund, this company does not qualify and this company qualifies. It's not that simple. You have to understand how the ESG ratings work, and sometimes the results will surprise us.
All right. Well, it's clearly a field that one needs to do a lot of work in and really understand better how companies are adapting to it. Ankur, I'm sure you have a take on whether it's IPOs, stock markets, within stock markets, apart from new listings, overseas investments as well. If we're talking about companies that we associate with, the Apples and Netflixes of the world are clearly, a fancy for most investors, but also very expensive. What do you recommend to investors? Would it be a significant portion in stock markets as an asset class? Would it be divided between, let's say, mutual funds vis-a-vis direct investing and other asset classes? How would you recommend shaping a portfolio?
I usually cater to audiences which are in their late teens or their early 20s, individuals that have just started earning. And by design, they should have a higher risk propensity than others because the responsibilities on them are limited. They have a long-term view, so they are able to withstand any downfall that may happen in that portfolio over a short period of time, because over a long period of time, they're able to manage that. And then by definition, it becomes a largely equity-driven portfolio that at least I would personally recommend. Okay. If you do not have the wherewithal of deciding which stock to buy, then please realize there are experts that do that, whether it is a portfolio of stocks in case of mutual funds or small cases, or whether you go for advisors who do so. They come at an additional cost, and that's something you'll have to bear as against just picking up a stock directly. Okay. But if I were to suggest anyone in their 20s on how they should look at their money outside of emergency fund that they should have, outside of insurance that they should have for their life and their health, please invest a sizable amount of your money in equities over a long term. You will be sitting on 15 to 20%. And it may seem like a really low ball number because early on that doesn't move. But as is always said, the eighth wonder of the world is compounding. Yes. When you begin to plot it, you are absolutely blown away by what it does to your portfolio, not just over the long run, but even over decades.
Awesome. Mukul, tell me how much of one's earnings should one be putting into investing? Let's say in your 20s, in your 30s, give us a percentage if you want to make that CAGR of, let's say, a ballpark 15%.
See, I'll give you two rules here, probably. One is 50-30-20 rule, which means that 50% of your income can go towards your needs, right? Which means your expenses, your rent, your groceries, etc. Yeah. Then 30% of money can go towards your wants. For example, you want an iPhone, please get it, right? And if you want a good laptop, please go ahead. And if you want a car, go ahead and get it. But at least 20% should go towards your savings, okay, right? Which means savings as in either in FDs or other investments, right? Sure. So other investments means, again, how much, as Ankur said, that if you are young, probably you should be investing more in your in equities, right? So again, here there is a rule which is 100 minus your age. So suppose if somebody is 30, 100 minus 30 is 70%. So 70% can go in your equities. Okay. So these two rules, if people follow diligently, in a disciplined way over a long time, people will be in good shape, I think.
Saurav, any closing questions for our guests today? We've got all three of them together. They're tough to catch.
Yes, absolutely, as we realized. But tell me one last question before Abha wraps it up for us. And this again goes out to anyone who wants to jump in, any of you. When this is a time when the going is good broadly. I mean, in terms of the markets going up over a longer term, over the last 1.5 years, what is the kind of strategy change you guys will do once and whatever goes up will come down at some point? What are the things you need you tell investors to keep in mind when the markets are really going into a free fall, and that happens pretty often?
And have you experienced that yet in terms of catering to investor concerns? Pranjal, why don't you jump in first?
Right. So, I think in a time like this, a simple thumb rule could be that, yes, markets are, in a pendulum, and yes, they could correct. So which funds you should stay invested in, which investment should you liquidate? Simple thumb rule. Any money that you think you need in the next couple of years, so you've invested for 1 year, for a couple of years, maybe it's the right time to take that out. Any investment which you don't need for the next 5 years, 10 years, which you have invested for the very long term, please don't touch that. In the long run, markets will still do very well from here. But any money that you need over the next 1 or 2 years, maybe it's the right time to liquidate. Also, the answer depends on the age group. So someone who's young, say under 30, under 35, and for him or her, most of his cash flows or income will come in the future. So, no matter how much the market corrects, you'll have the next 5-10 years when your earnings will grow to invest more and average out whatever errors that you have done. But for someone who's say above 50 and who has invested his life's savings, and probably 5 years down the line, his cash flows will stop and he'll start living on his past savings. So for someone like that, it's a great time to maybe shift to FDs and safer asset classes. So it depends on your cash flow, whether it's in the past or in the future.
Mukul, give us your closing comments in terms of how you would handle that situation, and also perhaps, some of the themes that, because we're not going into specific stocks, I know, but something perhaps that you're excited about as an investment that could really last well into the future.
Yeah, see, I think Pranjal had already touched upon that theme, and ESG theme is one such theme which I really, look forward to, because ESG is such an all-encompassing theme, as in, people will have to, look at renewable energy. People will have to look at electric vehicles. People will have to look at, carbon credits, saving energy. So I think as long as all the companies are sticking to it, and I think, over last 3-4 years, we are seeing affirmative action from all the big corporates and all the big companies. So I think that is a great theme to look forward to. But of course, every theme will have its, all pros and cons, including the competition. For example, in electric vehicles, we will see increasing competition, from the likes of maybe companies like Apple, Google, who are planning to come up with these kind of technologies. So I think themes are great, but yes, we have to be cautious, and we will have to see who will be the winners.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, Pranjal, Mukul and Ankur. It's been great to have this opportunity to speak with you from the entire team at Business Today. And thank you, Saurav, for taking out the time to be on the session today. Ashish for, of course, putting together a fabulous story. These are the leading financial influencers here in India today, and lots more coming up when it comes to what they have planned in their individual businesses and content platforms. We look forward to it. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.